Hey everybody. So on today's episode of Women in Wellness and the first episode in sort of this inaugural season that I'm kicking off, I am speaking to my wonderful friend, Madison. She is a licensed esthetician, working in the health and wellness space, is also a lover of all things physical fitness and moving her body and getting sweaty. We have a pretty good time working out together. And I wanted her on the first episode, and she was so lovely and kind enough to take some time out of her long and busy day to talk to me so I can learn a little bit more about what it takes to become a licensed esthetician. I know like absolutely nothing about what you have to do to become an esthetician. What are some of the things that estheticians do on a daily basis? Things that you've learned along the way, challenges, why it is that you like to do what you do. And then we'll break for some questions and answers because we got some input from the Instagram and things that some burning questions that people had for you. So I will pass the baton to you. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Hi. Well, thanks for having me. Excited to be your little guinea pig for your first one.
Yes.
Um, so my name is Madison. I go by Maddie by a lot of my friends. And I am from Winston-Salem, born and raised. So I've been here literally for about 23 years now. And I've been working in the beauty industry itself for 4 years, actually, this month. And I have been working as an esthetician for coming up 2 years this fall. So, yeah.
Wonderful. What made you want to become an esthetician?
So it kind of, I definitely went about it in a very roundabout way. And this is super interesting because we've never actually talked about this, like between the two of us. But um, I basically was working in salon spaces for about 3 years um, before I started to kind of dip my toe into skincare. And I had always been interested in it, and I always cared about my skin and like taking care of it, but I never really viewed it as like a career option for myself. And you know, I started going to medical spas. I started um, getting more involved in it, and it just became very clear very quickly that that was what I would do. Um, and that's kind of just how it happened. And I'm actually, by official title, I'm a cosmetologist in the state of North Carolina. But under your cosmetology license, the way it works is you're hi Awthorn. I'm
Special
also I'm
guest.
also a cat mom. Um, so how do you say hi? Okay, no. So in the state of North Carolina, if you have your cosmetology license, you can basically do anything from lashes, brows, hair, skin, waxing, whatever you want to do, you can do it. Um, and so an aesthetics program is 6 months long. The cosmetology program is 1 year long. I went into cosmetology originally wanting to be, a hair and makeup stylist for weddings. And then it just sort of did lots of twists and turns in between. And I realized that that really wasn't where my passion was. And um, just began to surround myself with a lot of people that had advice for me on how to get my foot in the door for that type of thing. Because, truth be told, it's not always easy having your cosmetology license because a lot of employers won't view that as like ideal like training to go into. So really it just took a few people that, were willing to give me a chance and, had faith in me. And it sort of just kind of went from there.
Mm. And when you say that getting your cosmetology license wasn't maybe like the preferred education background? What are you in like referencing to? Like what would be the preferred
So
background
the
education?
preferred is having your aesthetics license, because when
Okay.
you in in aesthetic school, their primary focus um, is waxing, it's facials, it's all of that. Like that is where they start, it's where they end. When I was in the cosmetology program is designed specifically for people who want to be hairstylists, because that is what you mainly focus on. You do
Okay.
touch base on skin, you do touch base on waxing, you touch base on those things, but it's not in depth as esthetician training or school is. So even though the law says you can do it,
Mhm.
employers are kind of a little bit, most of the time, I find, um, are a little bit more hesitant with that, unless you have prior experience, or you've been doing it for years or something like that.
Mhm.
So
So, where did you go to school?
I went to the Aveda Institute in Chapel Hill.
That's interesting.
Yes. So myself and Whitney actually both went there. She got her aesthetics license there. I got my cosmetology license there.
Interesting. And you,
Yes.
how long was that program for? You said about a year and a half
The
collectively?
program itself was a year front to back. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha. And is your job currently at Glow your first position since you graduated from the Aveda Institute?
It is no, it's not.
Yeah,
I
I'm just curious to learn how, you go from, like your undergraduate program, you go to school for cosmetology, for aesthetics, and then how do you get that first job in the in that realm?
so the good news is, I mean, it's not super difficult to get a job, as usually people start out of a cosmetology school if they want to do hair. They start as like an apprentice, and somewhere where they are under intense training, they're shadowing people, they're taking classes, they're being trained, and basically you're under someone's wing or a company's wing for X amount of time. Um, and then from there you build on that, and eventually you go off on your own and you start taking clients, and that's when and then you learn as you go,
Mhm.
while also still maintaining your training and your licensure and all that stuff. Um, so I did that. I did work in a salon briefly doing hair, very briefly. um, was not for me, definitely not my forte, which you would think that after doing it for, gosh, months in school, that I would have found that out, but it's
Mhm.
different. It's just a different atmosphere, and you don't know until you're actually doing it and working for your
Mhm.
money. Um, and then that was enough to send me in, like, I just needed a break, and I was going to figure out what I was going to do later. So I worked as a reception for a few years, as a receptionist for a few years. And in those 2 years that I was a receptionist, I that's when I began to kind of be surrounded by people who were into skincare, people who, you know, got Botox and fillers. And I just started to kind of look more into those things. And then I think something just clicked for me at that point.
Mhm.
And again, I was lucky enough to have people that were willing to, take that chance on me, because not everyone is. And, you know, very similarly to, a new hairstylist getting out of school and becoming an apprentice and being, kind of protected and like nurtured and all that stuff. I felt I had a very similar experience working for Whitney and beginning to work for her. Um, we trained and trained and trained, and then um, and it just worked. And we here I am.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's fantastic. And you've been at Glow for 2 years. What has, tell me a couple of, some of the highlights that you've experienced so far. tell me about some of the challenges that maybe you've experienced. Make of that what you will. But yeah, just kind of like, what has these past 2 years been like for you?
So, so I've been at Glow actually for about a year and a half. I did a little bit of aesthetics prior to working at Glow, just like part-time stuff. Um, Kind of my first sort of like foot in the door experience to figure out what I wanted to do. Um, and then, so since being at Glow, gosh, there's so much. Um, I think the I think one of the best parts about my job is the critical thinking that I get to do
Mm,
on a daily basis,
tell me more about
because
that.
every person that comes in is different. So whether you're there for a facial or you're there for a spray tan, you can't necessarily do everything the same way every single time. You have to analyze what you're doing, how you're going to go about it, how
Mm,
are you going to treat something, how are you going to correct something. Um, in particular, skin, I find that we do this the most with skin. And, you know, we see everything from people with severe acne to people with rosacea to people with eczema to people with chronically dry skin. And you're always kind of trying to troubleshoot ways to treat that and help that particular client see results. And often it's not easy. And I do think that that is a little bit maybe of like a disconnect maybe between people who work in the skincare industry or even the beauty industry in general or wellness, that you know we just have these easy jobs and we walk in and we prep people up and then we go on about our business, and it's not like that at all. People come in and they're trusting you a lot, and it's not always easy work, and it takes a lot of time and brain power and commitment from the client as well to get the results that we want. And I think that's my favorite part of the job, is knowing that I'm still utilizing, you know, things that I've learned about problem solving, but I get to do it in a way that I'm passionate about or for a cause that I'm passionate about.
mm.
And that's truly been the funnest part.
That's the best when you are just acting in a way that is just in alignment with your beliefs and values. And for you, skincare is so important, and as someone who's dealt with my own set of skin issues, just like most of us have, it's people like you in that health and wellness space that we can turn to and to take care of us.
Yeah.
Before we move on, I definitely want to ask, what have been some of the challenges along the way? What are, a particular instance, or maybe it was um, learning something like a kind of like what's the word I'm looking for? Like sometimes I explain it as like drinking from a fire hose. So, when I went from journalism to higher education to healthcare, I mean, each new industry I've been in, I've had to learn everything so fast so I can do my job. So maybe you have something like that, but
Yeah. So honestly, some of the tough times I find that are the small things that happen on a day-to-day basis.
mm,
And what I mean by that is frequently, I will be totally honest, frequently somebody will ask me a question, and it'll take me a second because I have to think on my feet. I'm like, how can I articulate this in a way that they understand and in a way that makes sense.
Mm.
Um, and I think that truly, for me at least, has been one of the biggest challenges is because sometimes people will ask you a question and you don't know. And
Mm.
it's okay to say you don't know. And I have done that before, and I am not afraid to do that. Um, but I think having the confidence and building the confidence to be able to say, I'm gonna have to look this up and get back to you. I don't exactly know the answer to this, but I
Mm.
want to know the answer because I want to help you and I want to improve as an esthetician, um, facialist, as a waxer, whatever that might be.
Right.
So I do find that the hardest parts of the job are in like the tiny parts of the day to day, at least for me. And of course, you have your, of course, skin is so temperamental. You just never know what's going to happen.
Hmm.
So yes, of course things go wrong sometimes and you kind of have to pull yourself up and be like, okay, this happens. I knew this could potentially happen and that is where I think a lot of my job too is telling people, hey, it's rare, but you might have some sort of reaction to this or your skin might not tolerate this very well. But
Mm.
that's okay and that's normal. Give it a few days and you'll be fine, but it is possible. And so, of course, you have your moments like that, but definitely the smaller things on a day to day, I feel are probably
Mm.
is probably one of the most challenging parts of my job. And I think that's super awesome too, because we see such a diverse clientele that I'm never not learning about anything.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. I want to pivot slightly because I'm curious to hear your response to this question. When people think about, people that may just not know any better, they think about, aesthetics and they think about, getting waxed, getting your nails done, getting your hair cut. They kind of see these things as sort of surface level, maybe a little bit, self-absorbed is not the right word, but these are just like purely surface level things that you do. And I know for me personally, doing those things is self-care. It is self-love. It goes deeper than that, and it plays a larger role. It plays a small part in this larger picture of wellness,
Yeah.
especially as far as skincare is concerned in these things. How do you respond to that as an esthetician, as someone who maybe is like, why would you spend $200 on a facial, when you could be spending that money on so many other things? How do you respond to that, or how would you approach that?
My go to is I always ask people what's going to make you happy. And if saving your $200 and, booking a flight is what's going to make you happy, that's great. But one of the reasons I was so attracted to, I think, the industry in general was because, growing up, like I had to pick out time to do things for myself and I had to take care of myself, you know, you and I have talked a lot about mental health and, you know, for me, skincare and working out and taking care of myself the best way I knew how was a huge part of that. And so I like to compare it to like athletes that get regular massages, right? So athletes who are in the gym, 5 to 7 days a week, and they need massages to make sure that they are still performing properly. Its skin is very similar, except we all have skin, and it's exposed to the elements on a daily basis. And I, yes, I work in a more of a superficial on paper industry, but what I do every day, I feel truly goes so much deeper than that, because I do feel that people leave our services and feel better as a whole. And I think it's hard for me to articulate how I feel about this. Um, because of course, how I present myself and how a lot of people in the beauty industry present themselves is important to them. That's one of the reasons why we're in the job. Um, but I I just think naturally how you feel about yourself and how you take care of yourself, whether it's your haircuts, your massages, your facials, whatever that might be, I think that that is important. And I always have, and I just do. And I think more and more people are catching on to that. And it's, again, it's hard for me to articulate, but it's people more and more, especially with social media, people care about how they look, period. Like, we can't deny it.
Yeah.
But not only that, it's not even about how your skin looks, it's about the health of your skin. Um, I have sent many a client to the dermatologist to have something checked out because I thought it looked questionable. And, you know, that's also my responsibility as an esthetician, is letting someone know who may not know that they have a lesion or something on their skin that could be harmful. And that's also a role that we play. So,
That's huge.
yeah. So that's kind of, it's usually a lot of a longer conversation when someone asks me that. But, you know, different things make different people happy, and different things make different people feel complete or whole or at peace with themselves.
Hmm.
And I just feel lucky that my clients choose to, you know, allow me to be one of those people that can help that happen.
Hmm. That's great. Well, we are right about at the 30-minute mark, which means we are going to pivot slightly. And we have some questions from the World Wide Web. So I asked on Instagram for folks to submit their questions, so they can ask you directly. It is
Mhm.
worth noting that Jackie did ask us how we got so hot. So I don't know. Listen, Jackie, I was just born this way.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I wasn't, but um, how did she just fell off the back of the couch?
Oh my goodness.
Um, we should ask her the same question.
Yeah, Jackie, how'd you get so hot? We want to know. Okay, so diving into the actual questions, let's see here. So we have, uh, and if I can pull up the question and not be a boomer, first question you kind of already answered, which is how did you get into this career? What's the best slash the hardest part? I feel like you covered that pretty good, honestly.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll skip over that one. Next question is, okay, what is a good basic way to start caring for your skin through, I guess, they said esthetician's treatments, but I guess if you're like a beginner,
Yeah.
you want to begin paying more attention to your skin, what are some things that you recommend that everybody do, or a beginner do? Because it can be a little bit overwhelming.
Yes, it can be. And I think I truly believe one of the first steps that people can do is look at their diet.
Mm,
Truly. Um, are you consuming a generally anti-inflammatory diet? Are you consuming a lot of cheese? Are you consuming a lot of alcohol? Are you consuming a lot of processed foods? Are you consuming a lot of whey-based foods? Um, it, I I think people should start there, because if people look inward, it's much easier from an esthetician standpoint
Mm,
to, so we can do the topical stuff. We need people to help us out with the internal stuff, because sometimes, um, or a lot of the times, skin conditions, rosacea, eczema, acne are internal. Um, and so it is kind of a bit of a two-way street as far as, commitment, but definitely always recommend people look at their diet. Just keep an eye on it. Notice any patterns or changes with their skin based on what they eat. Don't obsess about it, um, but make sure you're eating as clean as you can, and obviously still living a happy life. um,
yeah.
but that would be the first step, and seeing if you notice a difference.
That's interesting. I thought you were gonna say something like sunscreen, which is totally valid and like it's
Well,
probably a close second, but
definitely, yeah. Well, yes, yes. Okay, both of those are important, but yes, you
sunscreen
definitely,
and eat your veggies.
sunscreen and eat your vegetables. Yes, very important.
This other question that I have, which is, I'm glad that they asked, because I'm also curious personally, and as you as someone who loves to get a nice sweaty workout in, what are your skincare hacks or tips for active, aka sweaty and outside workout folks? So someone who sweats a lot.
Someone who sweats a
Any
lot.
tips?
Okay. So, as someone who sweats a lot, um, I'm always hyping up a good exfoliating or oil absorbing cleanser. And what I mean by that is you can look for things like salicylic acid. You can
Mm,
look for lactic acid, works really well as in terms of exfoliating the dead skin cells. Um, Anything that is going to help flush out sebum, and also sunscreen, especially in this case, if you're outside a lot, you know, those are the two that I would pair together the most. Um, but you definitely want, if nothing else, you definitely want to invest in a good cleanser that's going to clean your skin, not compromise your skin, not strip it, just give you a good clean, and then go from there.
that's great. Actually, I'm gonna submit a question on the
Okay.
topic of sunscreen.
Yes.
So I feel well, I know that, it's the hot topic during the summertime. Everybody's outside,
Mhm.
they're using their sunscreen more, and we need to be using the same amount of sunscreen as we would in the summer, in the winter. However, I've heard conflicting information on whether a chemical sunscreen is better or worse than a physical sunscreen, so like your zinc oxides and your things like that.
Right.
Do you have a personal preference on sunscreen? It's mostly like asking for a friend, but I'm really actually asking
Yeah.
for myself, especially someone I have sensitive skin.
Yeah. So y- there are conflicting opinions on this. I will say, personally, overall, as a blanket statement, I prefer physical or mineral sunscreens. So your zinc oxide, your titanium dioxide, things like that, I usually prefer. The reason is a lot of a lot of times people who struggle with acne or rosacea, chemical sunscreens can exacerbate that problem a little bit.
Mm,
In terms, I actually currently use a chemical sunscreen. And I do enjoy it. And I'm not, I don't view chemical sunscreen as a villain or this bad thing that we should stay away from. Um, that's my personal opinion. I'm sure you could find other people that would maybe, disagree and provide proof, but I think if you have a sunscreen and you're using it every day and it's working for you and it's a chemical sunscreen, don't toss it just because someone said that you need to switch to a mineral.
it's a good
Um,
point.
if you're seeing good results, you're liking how everything's going, there's really no need for you to toss it. Um, And I think they both have a place. I truly do.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think we will just leave it there for today and wrap things up. Maddie, thanks you so much, while I trip over my words, for your time today. If people want to find you and learn more about you, I will include your details in the description of this video, wherever I post it, and in subsequent posts. But just promote yourself here while we're at it. Where can they find you?
Yes. So obviously you can find me at Glow Skincare Studio. Um, but you can also email me at maddie@glowskincarestudio.com. Glow with no W. And you can find me on Instagram at maddie.glowskincarestudio.